Bringing people together is one thing. Keeping them together, well, that is definitely another. It's community, codes, and consequences. The growing pains of any new civilization. On this week's The Walking Dead, Season 9, Episode 2. The Bridge. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Walking Dead. So yes, of course, your standard spoiler warning is right here. Alright, so moving right along into Season 9, Episode 2, we are establishing our new world, our new beginning right here, and dealing with a lot of the early growing pains. I found it very appropriate, Ezekiel's little conversation with young Henry here at the beginning of the episode, talking about Rome and their use of roads, that it was roads that allowed Rome to really grow and become the large, dominant civilization of the era. And it's entirely true. The ability to travel from one community to the other, advancing both travel, both people, trade, knowledge, all of those types of things, very important for the growth of any civilization. Without roads, without those connectors, without those travel lines, we don't have the same type of growth, we don't have the same type of power, we don't have the same type of reach. So the bridge that we are building here in Season 9, specifically dealing with a lot of that in this episode, really is tantamount for that. It is not only just a physical bridge to cross over a river, but a symbolic bridge as well. Again, connecting these far-flung communities, allowing trade, allowing resources, allowing people to travel and connect. And so it's those types of growing pains we're really dealing with, focusing a lot in this episode. We have, again, the physical bridge being built and the complications that are involved with that. Communities, resources having to come together, and people having to work through their differences, or maybe not work through their differences quite as well as they should. But it was interesting also here is that we have the episode bookend by Rick's conversation with Negan down in the jail cell. I mean, it opens up all very positive, all very great. Yeah, it's a good day. It's day 35. People are coming together. We're building these things. It's all like, yeehaw. Everything is going great. And then after the events of the day, it seems it's a little colored, but still left on a positive note. Even though there are difficulties, even though things aren't always smooth. By the end of the day, by the end of the workday being done, people are still choosing to come together. That is an important facet of human nature, to come together, to create these communities. So it shows in some ways, not only are these, that yes, there are difficulties, but this is the natural direction of evolution. While the apocalypse split everyone apart and created a lot of the doom, surviving that, moving past those early bits of stage of just survival into building more of community, brings people together, that naturally people will start to gather and build off of what they have. They have a lot more strength together, a lot more resources pulling together as opposed to fighting each other off. But in order for that growth to really work well, the communities have to be able to communicate. They have to agree on certain things. And that's where we're looking more of what's Michonne's visit to Hilltop. She had started to hit this a little bit last week with her conversation with Rick about setting up a charter. And here we're diving into a little bit more of that. The needs for common codes, rules, how we agreed that we're going to interact, and the consequences of what happened if we do things wrong. Again, really focused here on Maggie and her dealing with the fallout between, Tammy and Earl. Earl, who tried to kill her in a drunken rage and is now having to suffer the consequences. And how exactly does that all lay out? And that's really where we have the conflict, especially between Tammy trying to see her husband and how that creates friction amongst the community. Because right now, without any codes, it's all just Maggie's choice. She's the one in charge, so she gets to choose. And we had there's a little conversation between Daryl and Rick, or between, there's a conversation with Rick about protecting the saviors. You know, I protect them, and then they're going to work, and how much does that sound like Negan? And here we kind of, in a way, have sort of a similar way. We didn't have a conversation brought up with Negan, but it's still that same type of, you know, king, dictator, ruler. There's only one choice made in it. So it becomes from an emotional standpoint. It comes from whim. How do you feel to deal with this? Was it right to hang Gregory? Yes, it was. Gregory lived way too much longer than he should have. But it will ask an important question. Why wasn't it me? Obviously, he agrees with Maggie not hanging Earl and hanging Gregory instead. But again, it's that conversation. Who makes the choice? What is the difference? And that's what Michonne is really kind of hitting upon. When she brings up it has to be something that's bigger than any one of us. The importance of having these rules, these codes, it's something that everyone can believe in, that everyone can latch onto, that everybody understands. You do A and B happens. You do C and D happens. Everyone knows the consequences. It's not on whim. It's codified. It removes the individual from that. And we are dealing with a lot of that in this. Even when we have Rick dealing with Justin kind of at the end. When he kind of comes up and wants to leave. You got to keep an eye on your dog, referring to Daryl. Look what he did to me. And I don't have to listen to all this. And Rick, you know, again, using those strong arm tactics. Yes, you're going to stand here. You're going to listen to everything that I say. Because if you don't, next time you do, you know, it's not going to be stitches that you need. It's, again, we're still looking at that strong arm tactic. This is still the strong makes the decisions, and the weaker, again, not necessarily not strong, because Justin is a pretty strong individual, but that still it's a section of strength from when decisions are chosen from, and that is different from laws. And that's the point that things have to choose into, is that it's not about Rick throwing his weight around. It can't be that way, especially since we know at some point Rick's going to be gone. But there has to be codified reasons, so everybody knows if they cross a line, there are going to be consequences. And by the same token, it means that nothing is taken to any major extreme that is unnecessary. And that's really, I think, the main focus of what everything is going on in this episode. Now, of course, the other important thing for a community to grow is there does have to be a certain level of trust between individuals. And that means everybody's got to kind of be on the same side. And that's kind of the other little point that was sort of hit on here, especially that conversation between Daryl and Rick after the fight on the bridge, is, are we all on the same side? Are the saviors really trying to work with the rest of the groups? And this is kind of an important distinction. I know we've chatted in the comments a little bit about why are the saviors even still together. They were a community unto themselves, so just breaking them up shows an initial level of distrust. But whereas most of the other communities that we have, Hilltop, Alexandria, Kingdom, Oceanside, really worked in a cooperative environment, the saviors were a little different. The saviors preyed on those around them. You know, whether it be Hilltop or Kingdom and eventually Alexandria's, you will bring resources to us. They were, I guess, more parasitic in that sense, used to things being done for them. So now that that option is not available to them, that they have to kind of work and interact and exchange, you're not having the same thing. I think, again, most of the saviors, most of those individuals do want to interact. They do want to grow. But you still have a strong, important component that doesn't. They are used to taking what they need. They're used to having that selfish standpoint. And Justin, of course, our Zach McGowan character, really the focal point for that in this episode. The type of individual that is much more interested in taking. Yes, he can interact, but it's also more about him. So kind of weeding those things out, kind of working through that. Again, this is another part of the growing pains of a civilization. And we definitely seem to have some problems with the saviors. This is where we're starting to look into some of the conflicts that we're going to be seeing moving on through the rest of the season. Is we have saviors disappearing. A lot of them walking off the job. Most likely, I'm assuming that much like Zach McGowan, I don't want to hear from somebody telling me what to do. That's not his accent. That's just a random accent. I'm not trying to be anybody with that. But still, that type of idea is you have people that have been leaving. A lot of saviors have been leaving the worksite, which they would assume to head back to the sanctuary. But that doesn't seem to be the case. We have missing saviors. And this is also causing that friction between Michonne and Maggie in the beginning of the episode as well. The ethanol that was supposed to be sent from the sanctuary to Hilltop to run the tractor, that never arrived. And so Maggie's like, look, this is supposed to be cooperative. If we don't get what was sent to us, why are we going to send our stuff out? She's already kind of sick and tired. She's already hit that line. She's not just wanting to give away. Things have to be traded off. Which is, again, dealing with her as that strong leader individual of her community, where we see that kind of separate. They aren't together right now. We haven't gotten our charter. We haven't our founding fathers and mothers, our new founders, we'll just say founders, for this new world have not come together in their constitutional convention to talk about all the rules and abilities and who's in charge and how we're going to work together. That was Michonne's whole mission here. So we've got saviors that are disappearing. And the hint that we get off, the first thing that we can think off of that is that they are just leaving. They're done. They're going off on their own. Except, it was commented that these are people with families. These are people with connections. These are not people that would necessarily just disappear. So that leaves us, I think, to primarily we have two options. One, they are leaving to form their own little group of highwaymen. They're getting their resources, whether it be the ethanol or just the manpower, and they're going to be preying off the road and just sort of taking stuff as it comes by. Little highwaymen, highway robbers, taken from travelers as they come through. And certainly that last little shot with McGowan's character seemed to sort of imply that, only in the sense that he had a sense of recognition. He didn't seem like, oh, this is just some strange person by the road. He dropped his weapon. You're going to get yourself killed there. That's a sign of recognition that he seems to have known he was talking about. Then he gets quickly pulled and yanked away. So maybe not a good sign, but still implies that this is just a group of saviors that are sticking together. The other possibility, of course, is that this is a whole new group. And we know we've got more enemies out there. That is now starting to prey on, that are the highway robbers themselves, preying on travelers and taking supplies, whether they mean manpower or ethanol or food or what have you. And sort of supportive of this is Jadis's little view of what seemed to have been a drone at the end. Could have been a helicopter far off. Sounded smaller, not quite as big. And again, this is all, the world fell in 2010, so drones were not as common as they are now from a commercial available standpoint. But this could be military, which could change things. Because remember, we still haven't learned about the helicopter that we saw last season. The one that, in fact, Jada seemed to have been waiting for or expecting to come when she had Negan there at the trash dump site there, and had him tied up and down, and the helicopter sort of showed up and then flew away. So we've got some of these tail ends out there. That does seem to be another little group. And again, whether they're trying to work with the saviors that they're taking, or they're killing them, or they're turning them into worker bee slaves or something like that, don't really know. But I think this is where we're starting to look into what our new conflict is. There is a third group out there, or fourth or fifth, I guess, depending on how you start to count this out. Seems to be preying on travelers. Is it someone local that just is trying to have their own little breakout, we don't want to be working anymore, we just want to take? Or is it a whole new group? And with the technology we've seen, sort of lean a little bit towards the latter. Now, of course, building our bridge takes a lot of manpower, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of different specialties coming together. And that's where we get to see, I think, some really cool evolutions. One, I love Eugene as sort of the foreman, the supply information foreman, tracking how long everything is going to take, getting copper dams designed so that you can lower the water level in order to build the foundation for the bridge, checking supply lines, all that. That is so up Eugene's alley. I love seeing it. Even the talking about taking all the side food that could be going bad and making a gazpacho out of it, I thought was just kind of fun. So I sort of love seeing him stepping into that role. Edith also learning some medical skills, which is great, because the one thing that we learn is as many people to have medical skills is important because the doctor is always killed. I like Sahid. I don't want to see him taken out anytime soon. But I love the fact that she is kind of taking the time to learn medical skills, which obviously comes into important play later on. And also the idea of our environmental threat, the walkers. We're dealing with a lot less of individual walkers. We're really dealing more with herds, larger crowds, new things, new troubles to be avoided. It's not so much wandering around the corner and there's a loose walker or so, or going into a house or old abandoned building and there's a walker or two in there. Now at this point, most of those have all been flushed and killed out. But you have the large traveling herds. And now doing any sort of large group deals with having to negotiate around these herds. And I love the whole system that they had developed, that they got the lookouts, that they're keeping track, they're keeping counts of different herds, directions they're going, and when they want to do some blasting or they want to do any large work, they've got to have sort of a coordinated way of dealing with these large groups. Got Rosita blowing some of the dynamite right there, which I love. The handmade roll was looking at a tree, hollowed out tree trunk and wrapped in rope and stuff. I mean, again, sort of a low-tech way of using high-tech ideas. I really enjoyed. But yeah, blowing that's going to create a herd, but luckily they know the size and the relative count of the local herd, so then it's just negotiating things around, having the air sirens to sort of pull them away. You hit one direction, you start pulling them in one way, and then you make another sound, you pull them in another way. Great ideas. Why you would put Justin in charge of one of those, I was really disappointed about. Yes, it created our big conflict and our big scene there, battle sequence, which was great. But I didn't understand why you would have put him in charge. Also, the idea that our radio not working really is crappy, because every one of those little bases that you've got to be hearing and moving along, they have to be able to hear the air raid sound from the one next, because the walkers have to be able to be drawn, from one to another. So even if the radio was out, he should have been able to hear that the first siren sound go off, and then know at some point to bring it up. So the idea of a walkie-talkie not working, it's kind of a crap excuse. But I think that's sort of what Rick was dealing with in his little engagement there at the end, is there's always somebody every Saturday night grabbing a drunk, some yahoo, and there was always some speech about how everything was somebody else's fault, that it wasn't them. So that seems to be Justin's whole take, is nothing is ever his fault. And definitely a walkie-talkie working is a crap excuse, but on the other hand, shouldn't have put him in charge of that anyway. But that did lead to our little walker engagement with the wood piling group, which only goes to show it's important to have good people that you work with. It's important that the people you work with in the zombie apocalypse to be able to not panic at a moment's notice, because that's when wood starts dropping down on poor Aaron and other individuals. And in fact, I thought it was going to get dropped straight down on top of him. Initially, I thought the guy was going to look let go and drop it. So at least he held it for a half second longer, long enough for Aaron to notice it and pull the one guy out of the way before he ended up getting that massive log dropped onto him. So very tense, certainly shows that dangers are always around every corner in this world. You gotta have people around you that aren't gonna panic at a moment's notice. It's just, if you want to work crew together, those are the type of people I want to be working with. But that does get us to our Scene of the Week for this week. And yes, of course, it's the battle around the woodpile. Very sad, very frustrating to see Aaron get wounded like that. Man, that was a nasty, nasty looking wound. The bone was sticking out and giant, definitely no good. But we had we had a couple little moments on there that was really kind of exciting. One, of course, was everyone trying to get the giant log off of Aaron, and when that wasn't happening enough, Daryl turned around with a double knife action and just going right into the front of the herd there, taking out the first little line. It's so nice watching good people doing good work. That was exciting. That was a great little moment. And then, of course, only moments later, when it looks like the rest of the herd is going to descend on them, we have Rick and company showing up. And that was great because we have a great selection of people from every community involved. Jadis is in there kicking butt. We've got gunners from the Saviors group. We got people from Oceanside. We got Rick. We've got Father Gabriel out there throwing down. I mean, it was an awesome little collection of people, really showing selections from everybody from every community coming together in that defense point right there. I mean, it was really kind of invigorating just to see that. And of course, just badass moves all around. Really, again, these are people that have lived through the apocalypse knowing how to deal with walkers. And these are some of the scenes that I really do love the most. But the best part was the log dropping of Rick. Okay, Rick, you weren't that far away. You could have walked up with your big axe and cut that thing as opposed to wasting 2 bullets and shooting it with the gun. Still looked cool. But yeah, all the cascading logs going down the hill, running into the giant herd, dropping them out, taking out feet, taking out legs, I mean, that was perfect. That was such a great defensive move. And yeah, it's going to be work to kind of collect that wood together again. But seriously, that was just badass looking. The moment I saw that, I was like, Scene of the Week right there. That's it. That's on top. It was great. It was invigorating. It was low tech. It was really perfect for the scene setup, and it looked just marvelous. So yeah, that was definitely all sorts of awesome right there. And of course, the sad point out of that is Aaron ending up losing his arm because of that, having to get amputated. Poor Edith, just first day left on her own for medical care, and she's got to do an amputation on someone she knows so well. That's rough. Luckily, they've got their Key to the Future book that has all of this bits of information around. Nice. But still, a rough mood right there. That, of course, leads to Daryl's engagement there with Justin, and followed up by Rick's as well. So, yeah, that gets Justin out of there, who should never have been... should never have been put in any type of charge of anything at all. Again, I still think a really bad move. But Aaron survived, made through it. We'll have to check infection and so on, but I don't think we're going to lose that character. It just shows the price that everything is paid. And of course, he still ends things up. That conversation with Rick is, it was worth it. Seeing the value of what the bridge does of these linking communities, and of course the line of, before I saw the world as it ended, and now I get to see, the world being rebuilt, the world coming back together, its new beginning, which I hope they don't keep hitting on. I was excited to hear that, but I was also like, you're going to keep talking about it's a new beginning, like for the rest of the season, because that's going to be a bit too much on the nose. Just, we got it. All right, just a couple of small things. One, Father Gabriel with the smooth moves talking about frog mating calls. Yeah, who knew that that would work? Actually, I love he and Jadis having a little connection. I have to say, actually, when I first saw Jadis there when she was doing the drawings, it took me a moment to recognize her because she got hair and everything now and looks more humanish. But I have to say, I love the two of them coming together. Again, both of them having been on the outs of the community at their own times in their own certain ways. Now having a little bit of a connection there. Definitely she's rather forward on him too, but he's responsive. And that is good. So, yeah, just I guess a future note that talking about frog mating calls, that's the key to get the woman you're into. Actually, don't try that. I don't think that would work outside of this context. But really, good on them. In the beginning, when Henry's leaving and Carol says, "Didn't you forget something?" And Henry comes up and gives her a kiss on the cheek. Oh, that was sweet. Of course, Carol was talking about his bow staff. Don't forget this. And which Henry uses magnificently on a smart-ass Justin there on the bridge, knocking his butt down. That was awesome. But yeah, this, again, we got a whole new little family unit that's coming together here. And by the end, Carol did want to put Ezekiel's ring on. So, you know, maybe she needs some time and a little space, but she's definitely open to the idea, and they are cute together. Let's be honest. And lastly, Negan in jail. He's never getting out of there. Well, we know that that's not true. I gotta say, I loved him. We just saw him sort of in the shadows. I love the big beard he might be having back there. I think that's sort of a good look. But he is sort of representing the downside. What is he talking to Rick about? That you're just setting things up for me. That when it all falls apart, and it will, that you're gonna come and tell me all about that day too. Every civilization is going to have its ups and have its downs. It's growing pains and it's step back and it's slide back and everything like that. So interesting. I'm really curious to see where Negan is going to end up playing out of this because, of course, kind of like Carl, I would love to see him sort of turn things around and be a bit more of a good guy, I guess, a more positive interaction in with the rest of the community. Is that going to take Rick's death? Is that going to shift things around? Or is Negan really just playing that other devil on the shoulder, just putting doubts in mind? I'm really curious sort of how that's going to end up playing. All right, so I think that covers up everything for this week. Thank you so much for joining me with this review. And if you enjoyed it, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. Still, I want to hear what your ideas of what you think Rick's final words are going to be. With the whole bridge thing, I was just thinking, is he going to pull like a Captain Kirk, a Bill Shatner, and just his last words are going to be, "It was fun." See Generations, Star Trek Generations, it'll all make sense there. Anyway, but your thoughts, ideas, throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe, quick, easy if you're not. One button, you'll catch all the rest of these views, plus The Gifted and Runaways coming up later this fall. We'll throw up a couple of our latest reviews to check out right there. So, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.